So we're going to jump back into Rodric Williams' testimony to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry and his response to Nick Wallis's questions, the journalist who's asking him questions about Horizon and the thoughts of Subpostmasters on using it, responds in a way to say we can't bespoke a system to the whims of every single Subpostmaster. Essentially, you could put it, they can like it or they can lump it. If you do have a couple of quid spare and you want to support our work, please see the links to Patreon and Locals in our profile and description below. Thank you very much for your support. Let's jump into the inquiry.
And then if we go, please, to page 1, at the foot of the page, your further reply to the same group of people, again on the 16th of December at just after 4 o'clock, so it's about an hour and a half after your immediate reaction, and you reply to your colleagues in detail on what's said. If we scroll down, and you say, hi, my substantive responses to Nick Wallis's latest questions are embedded in red. And you essentially go through Mr. Wallis's email and write red paragraphs or text in red against what he has said. Okay?
Correct.
If we go back to his email there, they don't show up in red, but I can tell you which ones they are because I've compared the text next to the original of Mr. Wallis's email. If we scroll back to page 3, please, at the foot of the page. So what Mr. Wallis wrote was, hi Mark, I wonder if you or your colleagues could help me with a few queries. When was the last time the Post Office did any research into how satisfied or otherwise subpostmasters are with the Horizon system? It'll be very helpful to know the scope of that research and its results. And then you wrote, Post Office constantly receives feedback on Horizon from its tens of thousands of users through a variety of sources.
That's a little bit vague, isn't it? I mean, we know there's been suggestion in the past of a PR exercise that's been discussed with previous witnesses where they basically send a feedback form to Subpostmasters, but they'd certainly had some feedback from the Subpostmasters they were attempting to prosecute or take to court for civil damages, in that Horizon wasn't working and there was bugs, and certainly at this point journalists, at least for the past 5 years, have been reporting on alleged issues, bugs, errors and defects within the Horizon system.
And then over the page, the primary sources are the MBSC, Horizon Service Desk, Branch User Forum and NFSP. Feedback is also delivered through a variety of business as usual processes. Next paragraph, that feedback is then implemented through regular reviews and upgrades. Ultimately, though, any feedback has to be considered in the context of the entire user base. We wouldn't roll out a likely costly system change because a few agents asked for it. No business would. And then you wrote this, we don't need to do research on Horizon. It's the system we provide to our agents and require them to use. If agents don't like it, they can choose not to provide services for us. The vast majority of our agents and other users work with it just fine. And we're not required to bespoke our point-of-sale accounting system to the whims of each individual agent.
And whilst that is true, it does seem a bit of a hostile response, like these kind of questions are almost annoying them at this point. But we know from the people that have spoken out now and continue to speak out about the state of Horizon today, this is more than just an individual agent complaining about a point of sale system. And who wouldn't complain if it's making such drastic mistakes through bugs, errors and defects?
In relation to your reply, we don't need to do research on Horizon. It's the system we provide to our agents and require them to use. If they don't like it, they can choose not to provide services for us. Was that your view? Subpostmasters could either use Horizon or leave?
Yes. Because,
like it or lump it?
No, not necessarily, but it is the system that is used across many thousands of branches and I think tens of thousands of terminals. That is the system that Post Office provided.
Well, it's obvious it's the system that the Post Office provided. That's just stating a fact. What you've done is gone further. You said we don't need to research Horizon. They can either use it or go away.
And if we play the synonyms game with this research, you could say look into Horizon, the potential issues that have been raised with us about the integrity of the system.
But I was commenting immediately above. It makes it quite clear we do actually receive feedback. I think this is market research on users that's it's just saying we don't need to. I don't believe there's an obligation, and I'm speaking as a lawyer, I don't think there's an obligation on Post Office to do that.
But was this part of your thinking in your time in this decade? If sub-postmasters don't like Horizon, they can just down tools and leave. That's their remedy.
I don't think that's capturing what I've said here. I have to say I can't exactly remember what my mindset was in
Well, you agree this
2014, but sorry.
That's what it tends to suggest, isn't it?
Sorry, what I'd say is the vast majority of the network was using the system fine. On a network that scale, it's impossible, I would think, to bespoke it to each individual's preferences.
Well, it's not their preferences. You call them the whims.
They didn't want the system bespoke into their individual preferences. They wanted a system that worked and was fit for purpose, which is reasonable and isn't just be something you'd be changing on a piecemeal or ad hoc basis. It'd be something that you'd be implementing across your entire network, given how integral it is, going across thousands of post office branches and tens of thousands of terminals.
Is that what you thought these sub-postmasters were complaining about? That was the basis of their oral and written complaints? Whims. A whim meaning an eccentric flight of fancy.
That is the word I used at the time.
Yes. You understand it to mean that? A whim.
Well, yes. Yeah, that's
Did
the
you
word
think sub-postmasters were on eccentric flights of fantasy?
No.
Why did you use the word whim?
Because it struck me as being possibly very bespoke, very individualised requests for personal preference. But I used the word whim, and I think in doing that I was trying to trivialise the specific complaints being raised.
Is this as an example of what we read about in your witness statement, where you said that the Post Office's approach and strategy was to maintain an open dialogue with the media? You thought saying something like this back would help, did you?
Well, this was a comment internally to colleagues. I wasn't saying that.
Was it, though, because this was a suggested response to a journalist question, so it had become, even if it is internal at the moment, the opposite of internal, it had become very external and completely public if it was broadcast?
This is what the response...
What's the purpose of saying it to colleagues, then? It's to help in the formulation of the response.
Correct.
Is this part of the strategy and approach that you described in your witness statement of at all times maintaining a willingness to maintain an open dialogue with the media?
I don't think they're connected yet, because the way it works is, the way I recall it working for us, is things are circulated for input, views are heard, and then a position taken, at which point that feeds into what is taken back to the media.